I'm going to be doing a trait tier list real quick, and we'll start throwing them on the board. Someone asked earlier if I rate by cost or by how efficient or good the perk is, you know, on its roll that it does. I mainly scale on the roll that it does because most traits you end up getting enough points for it anyways, but I do count cost in a little bit. It's not just how good they are. But I will say a lot of the traits that cost a lot, the reason why they do is because they're really good and kind of broken. So let's get into it. We got Adrenaline, D tier perk, really, really bad. It gives you like 2 minutes of stamina or something when you get low on health. But a lot of people are rezzing with Resilience, and this trait doesn't proc if you have Resilience. So a lot of people would proc this when they get rezzed, but since people are taking this, you don't actually get this when you get rezzed if you have Resil. And Resil is a much better perk than this anyways. So that takes out one instance in which it would be useful is when you get up, having stamina when you get up initially is really, really good. But with stam shots and resilience and stuff in the game is kind of negligent. Doesn't really matter how much it costs. Ambidextrous is okay if you have dualies. It's not really absolutely necessary on any dually build that I can think of. It's nice to have. It's like one of those perks you get at the very end of your 15 slots. So you only get 15 slots to load out your hunter. So once you have all the mandatory ones, all the S, A's, and B's, if you're rocking dualies, it's kind of nice to have, but it's not as necessary as something like Bolt Thrower. It doesn't change a lot of situations in your favor, as many situations as Bolt Thrower does. It affects, for anyone who doesn't know, it affects throwing knives and throwing axes. It's supposed to make them more useful. It buffs the strong attack and the weak attack melee of throwing knives, but it only buffs the light attack of a throwing axe, and it changes up their animations. It makes the animations of the throwing knife better when it comes to melee attacks, and it makes the melee animations of the axe worse. So if you have throwing axes, it's kind of a detriment. It's pretty much entirely a detriment. And if you have throwing knives, it's pretty good, but once again, it's taking up one of 15 slots. And I would say it's probably going to go in the C tier because of that, where it just can't compete with a lot of these higher up ones. This right here is Beastface. It makes you quieter. It makes it harder for crows and dogs, like the things in the kennels and stuff, have a harder time hearing you. You don't aggro them from as far as away. Same thing with the crows, I think, out in the field. Because there's many times I've had Beastface and stumble into a actual field of crows, like crows, and they're just not flying off anywhere. So I'm pretty sure it affects the crows too, but I'm not positive on that. It does affect the chickens and the dogs. Honestly, I personally don't see a use for this. I put it in D. If you want to be exceptionally quiet, there's ways to do that without this, and I don't think it speeds up your gameplay enough to warrant it, and it takes up one of your 15 slots. So I think this trait is not good. I think what it does, what it has potential to do is great, but it doesn't necessarily make it harder for everything to see you. This is Bloodless. Bleeding will not escalate from light to medium or intense bleeding. Pretty good, especially with the amount of people that are running bleed builds these days. So not bad. I definitely think it's one of those that's not absolutely mandatory, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good to get at the end of your 15 if you have an extra slot. It's something that'll keep your hunter alive in some really intense situations, especially if someone's got a crossbow. Any of those heavy hitters, a Centennial bleed, Dolch bleed, like these situations are super panic situations where someone's spraying you down with a Dolch, they hit you once with Dolch Dum Dum, and now you're bleeding, they're putting pressure on you, they're still firing off bullets, and you may not have 1 or 2 seconds to just patch that bleed real quick. So just making sure that things stay light bleed and are always light bleed is really nice. Gives you a little bit more time to get to a safe corner before you have to patch up. So I think it's a good trait. I don't think it's the best trait in the game, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. This trait is Blade Seer or something. It lets you see bolts and blades after you've thrown them. Absolute garbage. Not worth the trait slot. Yeah, just remember where you throw your blades and stuff. You're fine. If you lose your bolts, just go pick up some special ammo at a wagon or something. Takes care of that. Bolt Thrower. I'm going to put this in A. It's only, just remember, for those watching, just remember that this is only needed for crossbow. But on a crossbow build, it is really, really, really good. It's almost mandatory because it just makes the crossbow feel so much better. And the timing between not having it and having it is often the time in which you die as a crossbow user. So like if you shoot the crossbow and it misses and that person rushes you, keeps rushing you with their shotgun, you usually have about maybe 2.5 seconds, like somewhere around there, 3 seconds to reload. And without bolt thrower, the reload is too long. With bolt thrower, you get that reload off, they come around the corner, boom, you get one more try, right? Before they're on top of you. Also, if you're getting rushed like 1v2, 1v3, this trait is also kind of mandatory because by the time you kill one, let's say you shoot and kill one, the other one's going to be on top of you, and the quicker you can get that one shot kill off, the better. So very, very, very good for a one-shot crossbow weapon, very much needed for a crossbow. But if you're not using crossbow, then you just pass over this and go to the other traits that are more useful for your build. We got Bulletgrubber. So what it does can be useful if you play certain ways. It would be one of the ones you get at the end of the 15, and I don't think you get this. You get Bulletgrubber over Bloodless. So I'm going to put it down in C tier. It's one of those that you get for guns that have small amounts of ammo. So like Bornheim, you could use it for the Dolch, and they expend ammo every time you go for the reload. So like the Spectre shotgun and Mosin, Lebel, Dolch, Bornheim, like be thinking those weapons is what it helps. You do not need this to do well with the Mosin. You don't need this to do well with the Dolch. You don't need this to do well with the Bornheim. Like it's not needed. It's one of those, like, it looks really cool. It's one of the coolest looking traits in the game because it changes your reload animations, but it's really not needed. I think they should buff it a little bit, especially since they made it certain ways. There's certain weapons where, like, if you reload it the perfect time, you don't even expend a bullet from the Mosin anymore. Like, certain weapons do that. And yeah, it's just not as needed. Bulwark, that's going to go in A. It's a pretty good trait. I put it a little bit higher than Bloodless because almost everybody at some way, shape, or form has at least one stick of dynamite. Whether they got it from the wagon, whether they got it from wherever, like, people have this shit. Also, explosive crossbow can be a menace, and this stops you from getting easily one-shot by it. This also stops you from getting one-shot from the bomb lance stick. It stops a lot of different nonsense. It doesn't stop frag damage, but pretty much all the explosives out there take a hit if you have Bulwark. So it does keep you alive longer in situations where you probably should have died. Yeah, it's really clutch. It's kind of like Bloodless. This one's for bleed, this one's for explosions. There's a lot more explosions in the game, in my opinion, because not everyone takes bleed. There is more bleed in the game now than there used to be, but pretty much everyone has some form of dynamite. So I'd say it's a little bit more necessary, a little bit more common, but I could put it down here if you want and just put it above it, but we're going to put it here for now. Conduit used to be tier, then they made some changes to it. For anyone who doesn't know, Conduit now, you get health and stamina boost when your team picks up a clue or closes a rift. It used to be 5 minutes of stamina when you got a clue. Now it's 3 minutes of stamina for every person on your team when you pick up a clue. So they nerfed it 2 minutes, but then gave it to everybody. If you're solo, this trait is not very good. If you're in a duo, it's okay. If you're in a trio, it's decent. And that's about as high as it goes. So I'm probably going to put it, where'd it go? I'm probably going to put it like down here. It used to be really good. The 5 minutes of stamina, if you picked up all 3 clues, even if you were on a trio or duo or solo, you got 15 minutes of stamina, which is huge. Now you pick up all 3 clues, you get 9 minutes of stamina. And let's be honest, you're not always picking up 3 clues, right? Like sometimes you find the boss right away, that's 1 clue, so 3 minutes. If you only grab 1 clue and someone kills boss across the map, once again, 3 minutes. Do you see what I'm saying? Where it used to be 5 minutes, like baseline 5, and now it's baseline 3, and the max used to be 15, now it's 9. It's like, I don't like it. It doesn't seem worth it. Just bring Stam Shot if you want that stamina. Stam Shots are more reliable. They last 10 minutes. Dauntless, pretty good trait. I think it's one of the ones you pick up at the end or when you have, it only costs 1, if you look. But yeah, Dauntless, thrown explosives can be diffused when interacting with them, and it only costs 1. So if you're ever building out your character and you have an extra point, it's not a bad one to look at because it could save your life. It doesn't just diffuse explosives, it also diffuses choke bombs and things of that nature. So it's pretty nice to have. Comes in clutch, only costs 1, but you got to worry about those 15 trait slots. I would say you pick this trait every time if there wasn't that 15 trait limit. But since there is, I think it's one of those ones you get at the end, kind of like Bloodless. So it might end up once again at B, but I think it's better than Bloodless because explosions happen all the time. Death Cheat, it's a burnable trait. For anyone who doesn't know, Death Cheat makes it to where if you lose the match, if your character dies, it's still alive. So if you lose completely and back out of the menu, it burns the trait up, but then keeps your hunter alive. You keep your traits. So yes, it's S tier, but you only can get it in game. You can't purchase it from the menu. So it's good to leave a slot open. So out of the 15 slots, only get 14 because you want to leave a slot for Death Cheat. Obviously, your hunter might die at some time. You might lose a match. And this stops you from having any ill effects from losing, which in Bounty Hunt, there always is ill effects from losing if you don't have it. This is Decoy Supply, I think. Worst trait in the game. I don't even think they changed it, right? Decoy Supply. Restock all types of decoys from ammo crates. Yeah, it's the worst trait in the game. It's garbage. You just never, ever take up one of your 15 with this unless you're just really feeling it. You're just like, you know what? Why the fuck not? Outside of that, no reason. Determination. I'll probably put it over here. Pretty much everything below B, guys, is kind of unusable. Just throwing it out there that it's kind of unusable unless you're doing certain things. Like, so for dualies, you might want to put this at the end, but outside of that, like, you don't need it for dualies anyways. So, like, I'm just letting you know that C and D tiers are basically the unplayables because you only get so many slots. And so it doesn't really matter where I put it down here. Like the lineup of this doesn't really matter because they're all unusable. These ones are the closest in the C tier to being usable. And then the rest are they're just bad. They're just bad. Need changes. Doctor, one of the best traits in the game. I don't think it's better than Death Cheat, but it is the highest costing trait in the game for a reason. For anyone who doesn't know, Doctor costs 9 trait points, doubles the amount of health restored by first aid kits. First aid kits, by the way, are the only way to heal these things right here. And vit shots, regen, and med kits, right? If you use a vit shot, bleed and stuff still ticks while you're using the shot. So like if you get hit by a crossbow and it leaves you with 10 health, you don't have enough health to get the shot off before dying because it's heavy bleed, unless you have Bloodless. But it's heavy bleed, you only have 10 health, and it still ticks while you're doing the shot, but then it will heal it once your vit shot goes off. The med kit, while you're healing, stops the bleed. So med kit, it should almost primarily be your first go-to use. It's also restockable. If you use the vit shot down here, then it's gone for the rest of the match, right? But if you use a med kit, you could loot someone, you could find a toolbox and maybe get it back. So med kit is almost always going to be your primary heal once you have Doctor, because it's just a better heal. It's a safer heal. So I'd highly recommend using it. If you only want to use it when you're bleeding or something and use the vit shots instead, you can. I'm just saying med kit heals are the strongest heals, especially with Physician. So I'd highly recommend get used to healing with your med kit. See how many med kit uses you need per match, and then stock vits according to that. Like if you need 5 med kit heals on average to make it through a match, then bring a med kit and like 1 or 2 vid shots if you want. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that's kind of how I would do it. But Doctor makes your med kit better. And yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Fanning. It's going to go in like A. Maybe we put it in B. Let's try it in B. It's good, but it's not as amazing as it used to be. Fanning has taken some blows. They've nerfed the accuracy of a lot of fans. It's good to have if you don't have a fast fire rate weapon. So for instance, if you have a Sparks regular LLR, like main Sparks, not the Sparks pistol, and then you have like a Lamont as a secondary, neither of those weapons can fire really fast without fanning. But if you fan the Lamont, that's a much faster fire rate and can kind of contest with like the officer up close. Like if you're in a building and you take a corner and there's someone with the officer on the other side, you go blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? So you can actually contest in those cases. But there's already weapons like the officer in the game, Spitfire, stuff like that are way more consistent. You don't need this trait. And the trait costs a lot. Fanning costs 8. It's the second highest costing trait in the game. So like it being the second highest cost, it's only useful on builds where you don't really have a fast fire rate, where you don't have a Bornheim, a Dolch, an officer. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many fast fire rates. Dualies, like you just have 0 way to fire fast. It helps those builds out. Outside of that, not really needed. Frontiersman. I think this is, for me personally, I like this as an S, like for the way I play the game. But in general, like I think for the average person, it's probably going to go somewhere in A. It's very good. It's very, very good. I don't like bringing vit shots, which we talked about earlier. I like primarily healing from medkit and pretty much only medkit. I bring a regen or a couple regens to top me off in between. But yeah, like outside of regen shots, I really don't like using vits because they take up slots that could be used for other things like antidote shots, all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, with Frontiersman, you get an extra tool usage from all your tools, including your medkit. So instead of 3 heals with your medkit, you get 4. So with Frontiersman, Physician, and Doctor, they're kind of like the trio. You get full heals, right? Basically full heals. It won't heal you to 150 if you're at like 1 health, right? It heals you 125 or something. But it's basically full heals. It'll always heal into that last bar if you're over 25 in your base bar. So it's basically full heals. It stops bleed. You can do it 4 times, and it's super quick with Physician. That's a lot of healing. That's a lot of healing from those 3 traits combined. Now, to get those 3 traits, Doctor is 9, Frontiersman is 7, and Physician is 5. So that's a lot of cost. And that's the only reason why I'm probably going to put Frontiersman down a little bit in like the A tier, because I think Doctor Physician is the wombo combo, and then Frontiersman is like the cherry on top, instead of it being Doctor Frontiersman and then Physician being the cherry on top. So I'm going to put it down here, but I personally, for me, it's one of the mandatories. I think you should always bring it, especially if you're using choke bombs, decoys, like decoy fuses, burns now, like the flare pistol, stuff like that. Like Frontiersman is amazing. Right here, we got Gator Legs. I know some people are going to hate me for it, but let's put it like top of C. It's a good trait in very specific situations. Most of the time, you having it or not having it does not affect if you win or lose. These traits very much affect if you win or lose in a lot of situations. These ones, not so much. And like I said, maybe you can fit it in at the very edge of your 15 trait slots, but it's tough. It's tough to fit in. Ghoul, it's another one that sometimes is useful, especially depending on the packs that are available. Ghoul can get some extra bonus usage from different traits in the pack system. The pack systems are only around during like events, and then it goes away. So having it be good, sometimes when the events are running, and then depending on the traits, some traits don't even mess with it. So it's not even, I would just say that in general, it's okay. Like we're just taking the basic without an event running. It's not the best. So I'm probably going to put it down in the C tier. Greyhound going down here too. Yeah, looking around. We'll keep it that way. Hornskin. This is also a really useless trait, man. Reduce damage taken from blunt melee by 25%. Useful when fighting armoreds and group of regular grunts. I think it also stops some damage from the bat, and it also stops some damage from dusters, because those are blunt melee. But outside of that, like katanas, bomb lances, like you name it, knives, knuckle knife, like everything still does full damage to you if you have this. So it really sucks. 100 hands, decent in a bow build. It is decent, in my opinion, in a bow build. Outside of that, probably should never pick it up. And it should probably be one of the last ones you pick up, unless you have some extra trait points at the beginning, like from a soul survivor or something. It's not really that needed. Also, it does not work with frag arrows, and it doesn't work with concertina arrows, just as a heads up. It doesn't do really anything to those. We tested it, so it's only on the regular arrow. So if you're planning on playing full concertina or frag concertina or full frag, don't even bother with this trait. It's only on the regular arrow. But if you're playing, you want to go in Robin Hood style, I think it's a good trait to have. It makes your bow more consistent damage-wise. Not too bad. Levering. I'm going to put levering in the B tier. It's kind of like fanning, where it only goes on some weapons, and it's really not as accurate as it used to be. It used to be a lot better. I do think the weapons where you're ADSing, so like the Officer and the Spitfire, like those fast fire rate weapons, are generally better than trusting levering or fanning to do the job for you. It's kind of RNG, take the wheel and hope you survive with these traits. And once again, you already have so many good traits that it's hard to give up a spot for an RNG trait these days, if that makes sense. So we'll probably do something like that. Iron Eye, great trait. All right, For the weapons it works for anyone who doesn't know, it works for quite a few weapons. Remain in iron sights between shots when firing bolt action, lever action, and pump action. And it only costs 3. So for anyone who doesn't know, basically any bolt action, lever action, and pump action gun in the game, it increases the fire rate of the gun, which just increasing your fire rate overall in an FPS is pretty good. That is pretty dang good. I think if you're using any of those, I would take it almost immediately. It's kind of like bolt thrower. It will save your life. Like if someone's using a carabiner and you're using a carabiner, but you have this trait and they don't, you kill them first, like 100%. You just body tap once, body tap twice. You will get 2 shots off before they do, and you're using the same gun. So like Mosin, this affects Mosin iron sights, carabiner, Winfield, like everything just fires faster. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal trait if you're using those weapons. I would even say it's not a bad trait to pick up if you're not using those weapons. If you're going in with no weapons, and you might pick up weapons because it covers a ton of weapons. Or you're going in with a build like a Sparks or something, but you might pick up a Mosin in the match. Like it's just a phenomenal trait to have. There's so many of those weapons in the game that people use, and it just speeds up your shot with it, makes it better. I will say when it comes to levering, by the way, levering does go up if you're using the Terminus. I think it's pretty much like a for sure grab. Outside of Terminus, it goes down here. So that's why I'm putting it down here, is it's very, very weapon specific, where like this only works with the bow. So I think it's easy for people to know like, oh, I should use that with the bow, right? Bolt thrower only works with the crossbow. So it's like, I should use that with the crossbow. But this one's harder because there's a lot of weapons that use levering. But the only one that I think is exceptional and is kind of a must grab is Terminus. So if you have Terminus up here, just a little caveat, if you don't have Terminus, maybe grab it later on with like a Seni or a Winfield or something so you can kill bosses faster, stuff like that. Kiteskin, I think it's S tier. It's a 1-cost trait, reduce damage from falling by 50%. There's a lot of things in this game, like a lot of compounds and stuff where you jump and you end up taking fall damage, and any kind of damage hurts in this game because some weapons do 149 damage. So if you jump off of something, take fall damage, the amount of time that you need to heal to get up to full is 50% less, right, than with Kiteskin than beforehand. That's pretty good. If you lose 50% less health, then you only have to recover 50% less health. So it's a phenomenal trait when it comes to staying topped off. It's a phenomenal trait for getting away from people if you're playing on the top level of Fort Karmic or something, because they might not be able to follow and take way more damage if they don't have it. Phenomenal trait for just movement as well, like getting from place to place without taking tons of damage and needing to go find a med kit around the world so you don't waste your own med pack, whatever you want to say. Lightfoot used to be really, really good. I would probably say around here, and has kind of fallen. I'd say kind of around here, in my opinion. The best thing you get from this now is silent ladder climbs. You used to be able to do this little jump, Lightfoot jump, bunny hop thing that got nerfed. And then now it got taken out of the game. So you can't do it anymore. It makes your vaults and stuff silent too, but that doesn't really matter much because a lot of the vaults, it's like you run up to the vault, then it's silent, and then you keep running afterwards so people still know where you are. But ladder climbs being silent is pretty good. So once again, I think it's a trait that you might get at the end if you have the points and you have one of the 15 trait slots open, then maybe, perhaps. But it used to be really good, and now it's not as good. It's not as good. Magpie, if you're solo, this is S. This is like around here, S, if you're playing solo. If you're not playing solo, then it's like, I'd probably say like even down here. So it really depends on if you're playing solo or not. I'm going to make this, I don't think the average player of this game is going to play mainly solos. I think people like to see it and stuff, but I don't think the average player plays solo, so I'm going to make this for the average player. For me, if I'm playing solos, it's way up here. It only costs 1. For anyone who doesn't know what it does, receive 3 short effects when picking up a bounty token: antidote, stamina, and regen. That's okay. But when you're solo, dark sight boost capacity and all boost sources are doubled. So you get 10 seconds of dark sight if you're a solo. And then if you loot someone, you get 2 seconds of dark sight back, which is huge. For anyone who doesn't know what dark sight is, if you're playing this game, don't know what dark sight is, it is wall hacks. Like you get vague wall hacks And so getting 10 seconds of vague wall hacks is insane. Is insanely good. But that only works if you're solo. So once again, solo, awesome. Not solo, it's probably down here. You don't really need that short boost. It can be good for kind of getting out. So maybe I'll put it next to Gator Legs, wherever Gator Legs ends up. Because both these traits help you secure your bounty once you have it. So like if you go and kill bounty and then you see they're not blocking your extract, both these traits help you get to the extract faster than without them. And then on top of that, both these traits can help you catch up to the other bounty. Let's say there's a solo who picks up a bounty and starts running. So then you go and pick up the other bounty and start chasing them to chase them down to kill them or whatever. Then these traits help you get there. But once again, very niche situations where it's like, it's not really needed. Martialist, it's a katana only. And I'll be honest. So I might get some hate for this. But it's a cool trait. I just don't think it's needed. The katana is really good without it. Like, the katana melee already does a ton of damage. It already has a good poke in the middle of your screen. It already has good range. So most of the time, this is not needed. But it does improve your katana. So if you're mainly wanting to use your katana or mainly just using the katana in general, let's say it's a katana only build or katana bow, like bow katana, then you probably want to take this and this because you're relying on it pretty heavily. But if you're playing like Mosin katana, you really don't need this. Katana fulfills its role without it very well. So it's going to go in the C tier where like maybe you can make an argument in some places, but it allows a katana to be sheathed, which enables a first strike attack that does extra damage. The first strike attack has a little bit further range than the poke, but it's not going to be the difference between life or death most of the time, in my opinion. And it does extra damage, which is nice, but the katana base, let's go over here. The katana base does 165 damage on a light attack and 280 on a poke. And for anyone who doesn't know, Hunter only has 150 health. So once again, I don't think it's needed. I think the katana does its role well without it, but it's kind of like a style trait. It's kind of like Bulletgrubber in that sense, where like there is a use. Like it's a trait that you can use and utilize when you have a katana. So it's something you can grab. But I don't think, like, if you're looking to win a match, you're sitting there and you're like, what traits are going to help me win? This trait ain't going to help you win. I'm just throwing it out there. It's not the trait that's going to be like, oh yeah, let's get that, right next to Doctor. So it's one of those that are like, it's fun to use, but not mandatory. Mithridatist. I use Antidote Shot. If you use Antidote Shot, worst trait in the game because it does nothing. If you don't use Antidote Shot, probably going to go up here. If you don't use Antidote Shot, I'll move it down. Because it doesn't stop poison. Drastically reduces the time needed to recover from poisoning. So it doesn't even stop the poison. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, antidote's just clearly better in every way, shape, or form. But if you don't have an antidote, like, maybe you can fit this into your build, but what? Just bring an antidote, man. It's not that tough. Just bring an antidote. For anyone who doesn't know, a full antidote shot makes you immune to poison for 20 minutes, which covers a lot of the match. I really struggle to find a reason to bring this over Antidote when Antidote is way stronger. I don't think it has a place. Antidote's just better. So I'm going to put it down here. Necro, woo, 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 woo. I'm going to put it above Doctor, mainly because of how reliant not only trios, but solos are on this trait. Like, pretty much everyone has to rely on this trait nowadays. Because if you don't have it, the only way you get a res is the fight's over, or you have someone contesting the only dude that can contest the dead body. So like, let's say you're a trio going up against a solo, then you don't really need Necro. But if it's a trio versus trio situation, pretty much everybody on those teams should have Necro in order to utilize and get reses to win the match, because one of the strongest things to do in this game is to increase the amount of players on your team by 1. It is a huge buff. That is a huge buff. So if you go from 2 people on your team to 3 people on your team, doesn't matter if he dies in 3 seconds, that's still a big buff, because someone had to watch that person, someone has to be in range of that person, someone has to shoot at that person, someone has to hit that person, right? With like a shotgun or whatever. And some weapons in this game only have 1 bullet. Sparks, Romero, Martini, Springfield. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of utilization that comes out of having another person holding a different angle, even if he only has a 50 bar. Like Necro will win you a lot of fights and break a lot of fights up, a lot of stalemates, a lot of things like that. So I highly recommend this trait. I think it's mandatory in pretty much every version of the game, whether you're solo, duo, or trio. Then we got Packmule. It's good, not amazing, in my opinion. It's not the absolute top tier. It's something you pick up in your 15 slots, but whether you pick it up in the second wave of trait points you get or the third wave or whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Receive an additional tool or consumable when looting players or opening item boxes. So it's nice. It's really nice to have, but not necessary over a lot of these. So I would say like Bolt Thrower. I'd take Bolt Thrower over this if I'm using a crossbow. Bulwark, that's what I'm saying, is like around here is kind of where, but like this one are all above Packmule in my opinion. But it only costs 4 trait points, so if you have an extra 4, let's say you haven't picked up a Frontiersman or Packmule, but you only have 5 points, pick up Packmule, right? Because this costs more than 5 points. Physician, this is what I was saying, this is the Wombo combo, man. That's the Wombo combo. You got Necro, you got Doctor, you got Physician. You are literally an ascended hunter. Like these traits right here turn you into like a super hunter. Think of it that way. Like if you have Necro, and probably we'll put Resilience there too. Resil is pretty cheap. I'm gonna put it a little bit lower because I'd probably put, I'll probably put it like around there. But if you have these 4 traits, your hunter is a Super Saiyan. Like they've ascended from the base kit and gone to the second tier kit. But yeah, these 4 traits right here turn your hunter into a god. They can heal efficiently. They can deal with pretty much anything heal-wise, whether you're making them bleed or anything like that. They can res teammates from a distance, or they can res themselves. And if you end up going down and someone reses you, you pop up with full health, which all of those things changes fights drastically. Having super fast, efficient heals, being able to res teammates from super far away, and then if you die or lose a bar or whatever, getting resed with full health, these traits are insane stacked with each other. Very, very good traits. Pitcher, I don't really see a reason to go for it. I like levering and fanning over pitcher most of the time. It is really annoying when someone uses pitcher with a big dino bundle. So I think it's better than this because like there's a lot of uses for it, but I find those uses just by positioning your hunter well, I think takes out your use for this. So like if you position your hunter with height advantage often, then you don't really need this to get it thrown far enough to hit wherever you're trying to hit, behind some cover or something like that. If you're trying to block a teammate res and stuff like that, I think your position matters more, or you're trying to get a teammate res. So you're throwing a choke in front or a dynamite in front of them to block the view of whoever killed them. I don't think pitcher helps with that. Pitcher only helps with like if you and the enemy are not in a compound, you're like out in the forest and he's like running away from you, this will secure the kill, right? Generally speaking, like you pop a dynamite and they start running, like this is very good to secure the kill. And a lot of the times without this, you won't get that kill. But that's what I'm saying. It's a very specific instance where they have a ton of room to run. Like it's kind of wide open space and they hear you prime and they're not contesting you, like rushing you or anything. They're running away. Like that's one of the only exceptional uses of this. You can also use it to like throw it to another side of a building that someone might not be expecting. But for the most part, people get out of the trajectory line of dynamite when a building's around. So like if they hear one coming through a window, they go, okay, this is the expected line. How do I get, far away from it, the opposite direction, right? They don't like move further in that line. And they're like, well, I hope he doesn't have fucking pitcher. So it's okay. It's okay, not great. This trait is pretty useless. I like it for placing aggressive traps. I will say I like it better, in my opinion, than like Gator Legs and stuff, if you use a lot of traps. If you don't use traps, obviously it's down here because it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Picking up someone else's traps and then placing them silently somewhere else is going to affect so little of your matches that it's negligent. But if you use traps, a lot of people in the game use traps, especially like death traps. I think it's pretty good for placing aggressive traps where like You go into a compound, someone else is in the compound, but you want to block an entrance and not let them know that you blocked that entrance. That's very, very strong, can change a fight. And that's why I say it's like one of those that you might get after you've gotten most of these for your build, but really there's just no spot for it. Like, look at how many traits we have up here already. 1, 2, this one is one you pick up in the world, not one you can apply consistently. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We're at 17. Some of them are only used with certain weapons, but we're at 17 already. And that's not including the ones that you pick up around that you want to leave extra slots for. So basically, none of these traits are good enough to fit the cut. Poison Sense, yeah, it's real bad. It's way down here. My main thought on this, there's a lot of people that are like, bro, if you're using poison and you poison someone and they go behind cover, then you use your poison sense and you see where they are and then you whip out some weapon that has FMJ and then you shoot, right? And you get them through the wall. Oh, you get them through the cover. It's fucking amazing. I've heard that probably 700 times since this trait came out. By the time that you shoot someone with poison, they run behind cover and then you use your poison sense to look and see them and then get out your gun to shoot them. 90% of the time they've moved. And not only that, the poison sense wears off. So you miss, you shoot where they are, you miss, and you would have done better if you just listened to where they went and shot with the FMJ. Like, it's literally a detriment to those builds. You poison someone, they go behind cover, then just listen and guess, because you'll have more chance of hitting them because they're closer to their initial point where you saw them. They have less time to move and less time to recuperate. So it is horrible. It is horrible. Anyone that tries being like, bro, but you could use it. I've tried, man. I use poison a lot. I've used this trait a lot. And not even 99% of the time, it's 100% of the time it is worthless. It is better to not have this trait, even in a poison build. These traits are just worth way more. So no, it's garbage. Quatermaster, good in Quatermaster builds, obviously. If you don't have a Quatermaster build, don't worry about it. But what I mean by Quatermaster builds is Quatermaster allows you to equip a medium slot weapon. Let's go over here. Normally, your hunter can only equip a big weapon and a small weapon, or a medium weapon and a medium weapon. Quatermaster allows you to equip a big weapon and a medium weapon. So you can equip a Mosin or an Optimat and then still have an Obrez. Now, there is a lot of good Quatermaster weapons. The Obrez is spectacular. Dolch P, which is down here, spectacular. A lot of the pocket shotties, so Terminus Levering pocket shotty is also a medium slot. Very good to have as a pocket shotty. So you have some main rifle and then have that follow up with slugs. There's a lot of really good Quatermaster weapons in this game. And so I do think that you should make space for this trait and upgrade your build accordingly. So I think these ones are more mandatory. Let's say you get 25 trait points, right? You grab these first, and then if you have some left over, you might want to think about Quatermaster. But if you don't, right? And I'd probably put Frontiersman, so maybe down here. Because it's one of those where, if you have enough traits for it, it's not a bad idea to upgrade your build. Grab the bow, or a pocket shotty, or dualies, or the Obrez, or the Dolch. You know what I mean? If you're thinking about, I want to win this game, the medium slot weapons are very, very good. Don't underestimate them. They catch a lot of people off guard too. If you have an Obrez and you also have a crown slugged, you can trick people into thinking that you're shooting with a regular Mosin, and they'll push you, and then you just kill them with the Crown and King. Because they hear the Mosin, and they're like, oh, they probably have the regular Mosin, and then boom, right? So, there's a lot of weapons that you can trick people with Quatermaster as well. So it's just an exceptional trait. And I do think these ones you should get before, but if you ever get into a situation where, you can't get Frontiersman because it costs too much, because I think Quatermaster costs one less, just grab Quatermaster. It's very good. If your build doesn't need it, if you're planning to use Sparks Dolch regular, and that's all you're wanting to use, obviously, don't grab it. But if you're wanting to use the Dolch P, and I think it is better and worth the trait slot to use the Dolch P over the Dolch, because Dolch P is exceptional, then grab it. All right, Relentless is really good. Let's go over here. It's a permanent trait in the game. Your hunter won't lose a health chunk when downed. I don't know if you know this, but not having a penalty when you die turns out to be pretty good. I will say, I don't like the concept of planning to die. And even though Resilience kind of does that, even though Necro kind of does that, this game has taken death and made it more, not like failure, but like part of the game, where there's random RNG stuff in the game that will kill you sometimes, no matter how well you're playing. Someone lands a lucky shot, or an armored doesn't attack in the way it should, or a hive. I literally have a clip of this, of the hive. I go to shoot it, and it literally does like the fucking limbo and bends all the way over, and the bullet goes over him, and then he pops back up and it starts hitting me with the hive. You can't predict the amount of nonsense that happens in this game. So I would say it is a very strong trait. I think you should get these traits first, but if you're never dying, then you don't need it, right? So if you're playing like a Mosin Sniper Spitzer and you're sitting in the background, then don't worry about these traits. I still think these ones are better. Why don't we put it like here? Because I think Relentless is better than these two. But yeah, I still think these traits are better overall. Not losing a health chunk is nice, but if you don't die, then it never procs. Salveskin, pretty much everyone has access to burns these days. Not only is there lanterns and fusees and all those kind of things, but it's just, you're almost always getting burned. There's Dragon's Breath and Incendiary ammo. There's just a lot of burns. The Butcher burns as well. So in general, I'd say Salveskin is becoming better and better just because of the access that people have to fire. Like I said, I do think there's quite a bit of bleed in the game as well, but I honestly think fire is a worse condition to have, and people have more access to fire than they do bleed. So even with Concertina Wire and Dum Dum ammo and stuff, I think you get set on fire more often these days than bleed. It really depends on the event that's going on as well and stuff like that. Some events make this trait completely useless because they'll have a trait that makes you immune to burning and stuff like that. So it really depends on the stuff that's around, on like which one you go for between Bloodless and Salveskin. But I've been taking Salveskin, especially as a solo, a little bit higher than Bloodless. Like I almost always take Salveskin over Bloodless for if they're competing for the same trait slot. So I'm gonna put it a tier higher. But yeah, if you wanted to take Bloodless, or let's say they keep adding more ways to make you bleed, or more weapons get Dum Dum ammo and blah, 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 then this might go higher. But right now, there's a lot of fire going around. Serpent, it's one of those that's like, it's awesome to have when you have it, but it's just not better than the rest. So it's kind of like Martialist and Gator Legs. It's nice to have. Sometimes you can Serpent a bounty away from a dead body, but most people pick up bounty right away these days because of Serpent. And so if people pick up bounty, it completely negates your ability to Serpent it. You can Serpent clues, which makes you silenter in compounds. It makes going through compounds a little bit easier. But for the most part, I don't think people have that much issue just going up and grabbing the clue. Unless you're a solo, I think solo might prioritize this a little bit higher, and I mean a little bit, like 5% higher than a duo or a trio, but it really isn't. It's nothing super special. You can also start banishes with this, but almost everyone starts the banish right away. So in conclusion, it's not better than these ones. You can use it sometimes, which like compared to Greyhound and stuff, I don't really see a use for these at all. If you bring Stam Shot, you definitely don't need Greyhound and Determ. I'm going to put them kind of next to each other so that people see. But these ones I placed without explaining this, so I'm going to explain it now. If you have a Stam Shot or some way to gain stamina, it completely eclipses these two. Not only can you bring Stam Shots in, but you can also get them from saddles, and you can also get them from toolboxes now. So there's a lot of times where you end up picking up a Stam Shot. You can even loot them from dead bodies. There's a lot of ways to get Stam Shots in the game now, and then you can also bring them in, and they completely negate both of these traits. Shadow's exceptional. Shadow is, I'll probably put it right below these, but yeah, I think it's better than Relentless. Shadow is real good. Is it better than these? Like, would I take it? I mean, it's hard to compare these ones. For those who don't know, you don't spend trait points on this trait, or this trait. You pick them up through the world. So basically, I would say, like, if there's only one slot left on my Hunter, and there's both a Doctor Spur, trait spur, and a Shadow trait spur next to each other, would you ever have to decide between going Shadow or Doctor? So I think it's a negligible point on all three of these. I'm going to put it down here just because of how, like I said, these four traits kind of turning you into a Super Saiyan. This adds to it. It gives you, for anyone who doesn't know, Shadow makes it to where all AI ignores you. They can hear you, like they hear you make noise, so it'll startle them, but the bees won't chase you. They won't attack you even if they're really close. Like, they just ignore you. It's insanely good. And I'm pretty sure it even works on water devils. Pretty sure. Where, like, water devils just won't attack you either. So, like, it works on everything, man. It's insanely good. Highly, highly recommend. If you have to choose between Relentless or Shadow, pick up Shadow. The thing is, though, all these traits disappear once they're used. And this disappears on death. This disappears on death if you lose a bar. But they're worth saving a slot for. And then we got Silent Killer. Once again, it doesn't really matter where I put it because it's not good enough to get up here. It helps Bomb Lance out, which Bomb Lance is a pretty good weapon. It helps Katana and stuff like that out a decent amount. I don't think it's the difference between life or death in most situations, though. I think it is in a few, but it's so niche that I don't think you should really be like, okay, I plan that this trait is going to save my life. I might put it like with Serpent, where like there are situations where it's valid and it can be nice to have, but overall, I don't think it's worth. Bomb Lance gets the most benefit because it makes it to where the draw and shit are silent, so they don't even know you have a Bomb Lance, which is really strong, because if someone comes around a corner, they don't know you have a Bomb Lance, you probably can reach them at that point. So with a Bomb Lance, pretty good, but you don't need it to play the Bomb Lance, and you don't need it to play the Bomb Lance effectively. It's just nice to have, and it gives you a little one-up in some situations with Bomb Lance. Outside of that, it's negligible. So you could run it, but is it better than these traits? No. This is good. Slight addendum. This, I thought, was Scopesmith. It is not. It is Steady Aim. Steady Aim pretty much comes down here and is negligible, so it doesn't matter. You can take it if you feel like you have a very unsteady shot with your sniper, all that kind of stuff. It can help if you're really, really far away, like really, really far away. But most of the time at like 150 meters and stuff, you don't need it. It makes it to where your weapon sways less gradually the more time you're in the scope. But most of the time you're not sitting in the scope for like 15 seconds looking around. Most of the time it's like you go in the scope because you see someone with your eyes. You go in the scope, you line up the crosshair, and then you shoot, right? So I think generally speaking, it is negligible. If you're someone who has, you know, shaky hands and stuff, it can help. It can help. But once again, it's one of those situational and very small cases. I'm going, so the Scopesmith trait is missing, and I'm going to make this the Scopesmith trait because, like I said, it's negligible. So in this way, shape, or form, I can just write like Scopesmith over this. You know what I'm saying? And we're just going to use it as Scopesmith, even though it's not. It is Steady Aim. All right, guys? Slight addendum. This is good if you are running a sniper, a multi-shot sniper. If you're not running the Spark Sniper, if you're running like Winfield Marksman, Centennial Sniper, Mosin Sniper, Labelle Marksman, all that stuff, this trait's really good. I definitely think you should pick it up. I'm going to put it right around here just because it's the Iron Eye equivalent of scopes. It makes you fire. It makes your fire rate faster, basically, and it keeps you on target. So it's very good. I might move it above just because I think it is more necessary than Iron Eye is. I think you can play a Carabiner without Iron Eye, Iron Sights Carabiner, and do all right. Why not playing a scoped weapon, you can still do okay without this, but you do so much better with it with a multi-shot scoped weapon. At least I do. Like the difference between Centennial with and Centennial without, I get so many more kills when I have Centennial Sniper with this than I do without. Like the fire rate increase, being able to stay on target, shoot once, stay on target, shoot twice. Instead of shooting once, scoping out, trying to stay on target, scope back in, shoot again. It's really good for snipers. If you're not using snipers, don't use it. You can see traps through walls. Yeah, I'll put it up here. Let's put it like this. Let's do something like that. I think it potentially, there's a lot of people using traps these days, and it can save a lot of people, especially like the average Hunt Showdowner, from hitting traps. I do recommend that a lot of newer players probably grab this so they can kind of see trap placement of other players and set traps there themselves when they're in that position. So if you're new, I think it goes higher because I think it's a very good way to learn trap placement. Once you know where people generally put traps, you don't really need it because you just look for them in those spaces. But it is really good to have because there's trappers like me who put them in random ass places because I know people might have this, or because a lot of people tend to go with these traits and not grab it. Like the more experienced players, they just check the most common places for traps and then will keep running around like there's no traps there. So if you place them in random ass places, there's a chance you catch someone just because a lot of the experienced players don't run it. So it can be a good way to get around nonsensical traps like mine. On top of that, if you come up against a team of trappers, like where everybody on the team has traps and they're setting them up in nonsensical places, this is the only way to get around the compound without dying. Like, legitimately the only way. So there's not a lot of those teams out there, but it is very, very hard. You need to be very, very slow and steady to penetrate a fortress, a trapped fortress, by something close to like 15 to 25 double traps. Like it's insane how many traps you can bring into the game now. There's not a lot of people that have that playstyle, but if you run into it without that, it's a pain in the ass. So I would say, generally speaking though, in that situation, you just wait outside the compound, like wait outside of vision. They'll eventually come out and then you shoot them. So then you don't have to worry about the traps or anything like that. But yeah, outside of that, there's not a real good way to storm a compound that is fully trapped. Vigor. It gives you regen when you're in dark sight. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, but I think it's something you grab out of after you've grabbed a lot of the other stuff. So it is one of the last traits that I end up grabbing most of the time where I'm like, yeah, if you use regen shots, it's really nice, but like it's not mandatory. Like your build feels fine without it. It feels good with it, but that can be said with like this, that can be said with this. You know what I'm saying? Like if you have a bomb lance, I take this over this. But generally speaking, this is more useful in more builds than Silent Killer. So I'm probably going to put it there. Really, really good with regen and can come in clutch to make it to where you're not using so many of your doctor heals on random tick damage. So use that what you will, but I think it's a strong trait. Vulture, pretty good. I'll say it goes down here. Pretty good if you're on like a trio, duo, just to make sure you get those extra loots. Not as needed on solo because you know the people you killed and you can always loot them. If someone else killed some players, then you might not be able to loot them, but you can loot them with Vulture. So it's still okay on solos, but I think on trios helps a lot more to have at least one person that has it. That said, I think it's one of the last traits you pick up. I don't think you pick it up beforehand unless you're that one person on the trio. Like, let's say you're playing with friends and you see your other two teammates don't grab it. Maybe grab it around like this range. Like, I think you're a better teammate if you grab these instead of Vulture in general. But yeah, maybe around this range, like better than Packmule, Bulwark, all that kind of stuff. Probably grab it a little up here if you're that teammate that's looking out for your team so you all can get loots. But in general, I would say down here is probably where it belongs because most people don't need it. If you're on a trio, right, only one person needs it and all three of you can loot. So yeah, it's one of those you get at the end if you have slots for it. Whispersmith. This is the one actually. Silent Killer just makes it where your swipes are silent. Whispersmith makes it to where when you're swapping weapons is silent. So when you draw the bomb lance out, for instance, it makes a very distinct noise. And you won't hear that noise if you have Whispersmith. So both these traits are very good for bomb lance. The other weapons, it doesn't really matter that much. I think it's something that can give you the edge against very experienced players. And I mean very experienced. I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. Outside of that, I don't think it'll give you the advantage against anybody unless you're running bomb lance. So just take that way you will. All right, we're through all the traits. Now remember, guys, this is Hunt Showdown. Where's Hunt? And you have 15 trait slots. And you can see on this particular person, I just got Quatermaster, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 traits. I have 34 trait points down here. You can see all the traits that I have, right? And you can see the classics on there. I got Doctor. I have Lightfoot here. I have this. I have Resil. But I would generally... So like if we're going through... But you'll see that I have two. I have Shadow Leap and Final Gasp. These are event traits. They will not be around always. But they're really useful when they are around. And that's what I'm talking about is they kind of take up trait slots. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to just show you how I'm doing it, and then I'll get back to the tier list to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about on how many traits are absolutely useless in this game. Okay, so first, before picking traits on this guy, I'm going to pick my weapons, and I'm going to go, today I feel like playing Centennial Scoped with probably Dolch P. But as you can see, I don't have Quatermaster, right? So Centennial Scope, Dolch P, pretty solid build. So now we're gonna come here, and first traits off the bat, if you look over on the trait tier list here, see? So first traits off the bat, we go Necro, we go Doctor, we go Physician, I hit the wrong letter, and we go Resil. Then we see that if we wanna go Dolch P, we need Quatermaster, and Scopesmith makes our Centennial better, makes the fire rate better. So we're gonna go Scopesmith, and then we're gonna go Quatermaster. So now our build is able to do what it wants effectively and efficiently as possible. And we have our mandatory traits. So now at this point, all right, I go, what would help this build a little bit more? Well, generally speaking, Frontiersman is a great trait to have, but it's 7 trait points. Do I have enough? I do, because this character has all their trait points. But if I don't have enough, I might pick some of the other ones, you know, like Packmule for 4. But we have enough, so let's take it. We can't fan. Neither of our weapons can fan, but one of them can lever, right? So should I take levering? I don't think so. I think I take Frontiersman, focus on Frontiersman first. Then I would go Packmule, okay? Now look at how many of my trait slots are filled up, and I've just gone over most of the mandatories. Then we're going to come up here to the low-coster ones, and see, I still don't have Kiteskin, which reduces falling damage by 50%. So I'm going to take that. That's mandatory for me moving around. Dauntless allows me to stop choke. Choke's putting out fire, allows me to save myself from not blowing up from dynamite. So I'm going to take that. Bulwark. Probably will go Bulwark. I don't need Bolt Thrower because I'm not using a crossbow. I don't need Iron Eye because I'm not using anything that works with that. I see Salveskin still open. So my last few trait slots here is like Salveskin, Bulwark, Bloodless, Lightfoot, Pitcher, maybe Levering. Do you see what I'm saying? So like for the last few, maybe Vigor. And I would say I'm going to play solo, all right? This character is going to play solo. So I'm going to go Salveskin, Magpie, and then I'm going to leave that trait slot open so that I can pick up one of these if I find it in the game. If I find this one, or this one in the game, I'm going to have at least a slot open for it. And then, thinking about it, right? This slot burns up if I use it, which gives me an extra slot, right? To fill with Shadow or Relentless or any of that stuff. And do you see how fast this fills up? Do you see how fast this fills up? It's kind of insane how fast this fills up. But we didn't even have the chance. Once we picked our build, let's go over here. Once we picked our build, we didn't even have the chance to get down here, right? Like, we still have a lot of the traits that are up here not used. Like, we didn't use Lightfoot. We didn't use the bleed. We didn't use fanning or levering. I don't even think we have vigor, all right? Like, we didn't even get to some of the Bs. We don't have pitcher. We don't have vulture. So, like, it doesn't really matter, the placement of these traits. They're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. A majority of these traits do not beat these out until we get more trait slots, which we haven't in 5 years. Until we get more, those traits are just pretty much negligible, worthless, don't belong in the game, unless you're running very, very specific niche builds or just want to run the trait. So like, if I'm running Bomb Lance, for instance, I would probably replace maybe Salveskin and Quatermaster, or whatever it's called, but I would probably only take Silent Killer, I think. I'd probably take Silent Killer and remove Salveskin, and I don't even think I would take the other one that makes my swaps silent. And that's pretty much... Oh, and I would definitely get rid of Scopesmith because I'm not using that anymore. So I'd take that away and maybe go with the Whispersmith. But then I want to leave that slot open. So that's how I trait my hunters. And then you can bring out the Bomberlance. Do you see what I'm saying? And I just equipped 2 traits that are like super low tier on here. But they work well with that specific weapon, right? Now my Bomb Lance works well. My Dolch works well. So like, you can kind of fit it in. Do you see what I'm saying? But I would still, this is my personal take, I would still get rid of Whispersmith here and take Lightfoot, right? I would still get rid of Whispersmith and take Lightfoot over it because it's just better. Like, being able to climb, especially with Bomb Lance, being able to climb ladders silently allows you to get to height where people might come under you and then you can jump on them and slice them with the bomb lance. Or if people are on height, it allows you to take the ladder and get closer to them so you can rush them with the bomb lance, right? Like, it's just better. So I'm just throwing out there. Ladies and gents, that's probably going to be my trait tier list. Some of these might not be exactly where they need to be. Some of them might be a little bit better or worse, but like I said, none of them make the cut of being the S, A's, or B's, so they're negligible. Like, use them if you want, but they're all trash. They're all basically trash. I would say you could use Conduit, maybe sometimes. Use this, maybe sometimes. Magpie if you're solo. And maybe this if you're only bringing in throwing knives, you know what I mean, as your melee, instead of bringing in like a knuckle knife or something. This if you're using a bomb lance. Like, they're all maybe kind of sortas, but really negligible. All right, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the tier list. Thank you so much for tuning in, and yeah, I'll catch you next time. Poison Sense S tier confirmed. You know what? Chat's convinced me. Poison Sense is S tier. Well done. You guys have changed my mind. I didn't think you could, but goddamn. You guys are insane. There's some real big brains in chat. That's all I gotta say.